It looks like another few days of repatriation and reassurance for Ireland's travel trade. Yesterday worked reasonably well. Spanish air traffic control managed to let the flights come in and get out again. All the confusion was caused by the Taoiseach, Simon Coveney. He'd come on board on Sunday with the repatriation effort, but he did say yesterday that flights would be ceasing on Thursday. He tweeted late last night that actually they're continuing until Saturday. Aer Lingus are putting on extra capacity. They will be finishing the Madrid and Bilbao services today. Some of the other Spanish services will continue during the week, but they are intent on getting everyone home by Saturday. Ryanair, the bulk of their operations coming to a halt on Thursday, but they are saying they will continue to fly as long as they are let and as long as people are out there. That means that they may continue till Saturday as well, but everything is changing on a daily basis. Ryanair's advice is to contact customer services, which is a bit of a problem given the backlog at the moment. They say they're looking at it, but I would not be holding out hope that it will all be solved before the end of the week. The situation for European aviation is developing. A lot of airlines saying that they're grounding all of their aircraft, or most of them. SAS have effectively left with one domestic route in Denmark. Lufthansa and IAG and EasyJet, major groundings. Ryanair's situation is more than 50% of the fleet have been grounded already. The airline is heavily dependent on the southern European market. Its biggest market is Italy, its second biggest is Spain. By the end of the week, they could end up with just the UK and Ireland, seeing as France closed down yesterday. Lauda Air, the Ryanair airline, is closing its services today. Austrian already closed yesterday. The major play has changed from the aviation industry to governments, and we've seen an inordinate amount of border closures. We've seen France effectively locked down, and people in not exactly putting in flight bans, but putting in isolation for arriving passengers for 14 days. That's what Ireland did last night, and also issued the advisory that Irish people should avoid all but essential travel abroad. Essential travel, a big question about that. Who defines it? It's largely self-defined, and it isn't as significant now as it is when a travel advisory is issued for an individual country. It has huge implications for travel insurance, but those who are travelling now are well outside the gambit of worrying about what's covered by travel insurance and not. One of the issues raised last night by the National Public Health Emergency Team is that cruises are no longer advised for any Irish passengers. That effectively sees off sales of cruises for the foreseeable. The hope is the industry will bounce back. Some of those itineraries that we love in Europe are still in place, and obviously the itineraries in the USA have been cancelled but may resume. Travel agents are now working very, very hard to cover themselves and to cover their liability, particularly under the Package Holiday Directive, which came in rather controversially last year. Anybody who's worked their way through that document will see an awful lot of protection for the consumer, very little protection for the provider or the business. And travel agents have been meeting with the Department of Transport and with the Commission of Aviation Regulation. One of the key phrases out of that meeting was that the liability under the Package Holiday Directive for agents is the equivalent of someone who hears his pub is closed down and goes back to demand that he get refunded for all the drink he had in the last 6 months. It's a glib point, but the reality is that's the level of exposure that travel agents are facing. Other countries are reacting in different ways. One of the examples that might be raised this morning is Portugal. They await money back from the airline or the supplier before they refund the customer. Those sort of safeguards are not in place for Irish travel agents. Everybody is expecting some sort of change in that over the next few days. A meeting between the ITAA and the department yesterday, the department were very receptive. Transatlantic is still open and will continue. It's quite reasonably healthy loads on long haul, both to Asia and to America. A lot of those are just returnees. A lot of people cancelling holidays are cutting short travel that they had already planned. We will see a little bit more movement on that today, particularly with the airlines that are flying east. While Irish people have been advised against all but necessary travel, our large populations of Indian and Filipino and other places in Asia are travelling back and forward through the Middle East. Not the highest loads in history, but not crisis situation yet. While other parts of the networks are being closed down by the likes of Emirates, their Dublin services are still quite healthy. All may change according to advisories, because we've moved from a situation where advisories introduced by other countries are affecting us most to one that we've introduced ourselves last night that may have implications for people coming to Ireland through visas, and it also may have implications for people who would be travelling. Everything's still to play for. Asked Ryanair about forward bookings, and surprisingly there's quite a few coming in for later in the year, but in the short term they have absolutely come to a halt. Change fees have been waived for the month of April by Ryanair, and we also saw change fees introduced by some of the other suppliers yesterday. Irish Ferries have introduced change fees. Brittany Ferries also came into play. France in lockdown, they have cancelled their service from Rosslare to Roscoff. Rosslare to Bilbao will still continue. And here we are on St. Patrick's morning in the middle of the crisis. The many-banded crate is the name of the snake which is supposed to have originated COVID-19 in Wuhan quite a few weeks ago now. St. Patrick famously expelled the snakes from Ireland. Hopefully he's working on the coronavirus as we speak.